Hey, happy Friday. This week a new study shows that consumers don't actually care about 5G, HTC basically abandons consumer VR, and OPPO and Vivo get really serious about software. Maybe. Our tech knowledge quiz this week is all about famous people in tech, basically 20 questions asking you things like who is the CEO of X and so on. So see how many of them you can get right. Links are in the description, and welcome to the Friday Checkout. Okay, my favorite new releases this week have to start with the Zenfone 8 and 8 Flip from Asus. The Flip isn't really a big upgrade from last year, but I still love this form factor. However, the 8 is looking like probably the best small Android phone with proper flagship specs, a headphone jack, and a price tag of just 599 euros. That's great. Besides, I'd also like to highlight HTC's two new VR headsets, the tethered Vive Pro 2 and the standalone Vive Focus 3 that is kind of like an ultra premium version of the Oculus Quest powered by a Snapdragon XR2. And this launch will actually be my first story of the week. So the company had its big launch event on Wednesday, and I don't typically care much about VR, but I was really interested in what HTC said with these two headsets about the industry as a whole. Of the 54 minutes or so, the company spent maybe 5 talking about gaming and consumer use cases, and the rest was focused on the enterprise. At $1,300, the Focus 3 is unsurprisingly an enterprise exclusive headset that you could only buy through enterprise channels, and while the Pro 2 can technically be bought by consumers too, at the $800 price tag for the headset, plus another $600 if they also want the rest of the kit, it's clearly not primarily aimed at them either. Both headsets offer really high resolution screens, a decently wide field of view, and a lot of focus on comfort and adjustability, but as you would expect from enterprise products, HTC focused most of their energy on enterprise software, like a dedicated app store as well as remote device management capabilities, backwards compatibility, extended service, etc., which is what they think should justify the high price tags. This might be a little disappointing to consumers, but there's two trends that are very clear in the VR industry. The first of which is that enterprise AR and VR are booming. Just ask Microsoft, who signed a $21 billion deal with the US Army not long ago. Just for context, that's about 100 times as much as the entire HTC company made in revenues last year, including its phone business. And based on the presentation, HTC does have a bunch of high-profile customers lined up for their new headset too. And the second trend is that the mass market consumer VR business is being swallowed up almost entirely by two players. Facebook with its $299 Oculus Quest headset, which the company itself has recently admitted they are selling at a heavy loss, as they can of course make money from harvesting user data, and they are trying to establish themselves as the long-term dominant platform. And Sony, who once again can sell hardware at a loss and then make money from game sales on their closed platform later on. It seems like on the consumer front, there just isn't a whole lot of room for smaller, sort of independent VR companies that aren't part of some gigantic empire, so it makes sense for HTC to focus on the enterprise, where there's apparently a whole lot of room left to grow. Okay, my second story of the week will be both OPPO and Vivo for the first time ever committing to providing 3 years of software updates on their phones. Now, there are many asterisks here. Both offers only go for new flagships. The OPPO one is only 3 years of security updates and 2 Android updates, which matches the OnePlus promise, although with the company currently exploring the feasibility of maybe 4 years of upgrades. And the OPPO one was just a random PR rep answering a question of a random news site. But still, this is the first time that either of these companies made any real promises like these at all, and I think that is really significant. I think this change is at least in part motivated by these two companies focusing much more on the West now than they did in the past. For example, Vivo just entered the European market and just launched their first phones here, and OPPO of course has just started to establish itself and is now pretty comfortably in the top 5 here. The Vivo promise funnily only covers phones launched in Europe, Australia and India, so the company is indirectly saying that Chinese consumers probably just don't care much about updates, which would explain why the companies were mostly ignoring them until recently. And second, I think we are seeing competition at play here. Samsung obviously upped the game by clearly committing to 4 years of updates across most of its line, and with that they made all the brands who don't have such promises look bad in comparison and forced them to react. It's a bit like playing dominoes. I think Samsung was the first major domino to fall, and that has caused a lot of other ones to fall over as well. They're small falls for now, but I really hope that this just keeps going, and eventually, fingers crossed, we'll have decent updates more or less across the board in the Android landscape. Okay, and my third and absolutely favorite story of this week will be a new study from Ericsson showing in a fantastic cell phone that consumers basically couldn't care less about 5G. And in particular, this graph really caught my attention. The tiny light blue bars at the bottom show people with 5G phones who actually use 5G networks. That's very few people. The huge dark blue bars on top show people with 5G capable handsets that don't actually have a 5G plan connected to them, which is way more people across the board. And what I found most hilarious is that in the middle we have people who have 5G plans but no 5G phone. So they are either paying for a service that they can't actually use, or they are getting it for free and can't be bothered to upgrade their phones to take advantage of it. And this data is just incredible. It shows that after years of carriers, phone makers, chip makers, random pundits on TV, random news blogs on the internet, everyone yelling at consumers, hey, 5G is the next big thing, it's going to revolutionize everything, the reaction from actual consumers is basically crickets. Nothing. The vast majority of people who actually own 5G phones around the world, including me by the way, or any of my friends who aren't tech YouTubers, couldn't be bothered to upgrade to a 5G plan despite their phone supporting it. And not only that, in all countries except for Korea, there are now more people on 5G plans whose phones can't even use the network than there are people who can. That means right now there are more people who basically either accidentally pay for a 5G network without realizing that they can't actually use it, or essentially got it for free from their carrier but can't be bothered to upgrade their phone to make use of it. Then there are people who pay for it and use it. Like, that's the level of lack of interest. And surely a part of the reason for that is that many of us are stuck at home now and we just have Wi-Fi at home. But as the study itself quietly admits, outside of industrial use cases or things like self-driving cars, nobody has shown consumers any compelling use cases that would actually justify paying extra for. My theory is that companies know that 5G is really only a big deal for industrial users for now, but they're trying to push it to consumers really hard anyway, because building out the networks is so expensive that the carriers need us to pay for it as well, so they can afford building it out fast anyway, even if we aren't its primary beneficiaries. Okay, so that's it for the news this week, and starting next week, I'd like to start highlighting not only my favorite releases, but also yours. So if you have an Android phone, get the Crowd app and upvote the new releases you find the most interesting at least once a week, so I can highlight the one with the most upvotes as our community favorite every week in the Friday checkout. We've had almost 50 new releases just this week across a bunch of categories, so there's lots to choose from usually. And if you don't have an account yet, remember that you'll need to get an invite code, which you can get by completing the quiz. So good luck, pick your favorites, and I'll see you next week.